Welcome to Settings, part of the Theia 3D tutorial series. In this video, we will describe the settings and preferences that can be configured in the Preferences menu. With Theia 3D open, use the Settings button in the sidebar, navigate to Edit Preferences under the Settings drop-down menu, or use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl, to open the Preferences sidebar. The settings are organized in 3 tabs: Analysis, Rendering, and Setup. At the top of the Preferences pane you can load custom preferences, save those custom preferences, load previously saved default preferences which can be created by the user, and save the current preferences as a new set of default preferences. It is possible to have multiple default preferences files which can be used to ensure consistent settings are used when processing specific movements or data for a specific project, as 2 examples. To set custom preferences, adjust any settings within the Analysis, Rendering, or Setup tabs as desired. After making your adjustments, click Save As, which allows you to save the currently selected settings as a new preferences file. To load a previously saved set of preferences, click Load, which will allow you to select an existing preferences file. To save a new set of default preferences, which can be easily accessed using the Default Preferences dropdown, adjust any settings as desired and click Save as Default. Name this set of default preferences as desired, and click Save. This will save the currently selected settings in a new preferences file in Theia's Default Preferences folder, and these preferences will then be available for selection in the Default Preferences dropdown. To load a set of default preferences, select the desired default preferences from the dropdown and click Load Default. The Analysis tab contains preferences related to how the data will be processed. Analysis Frame Range allows you to select a specific range of frames that will be analyzed if you do not want to analyze the entire trial. By default, this is set to the first and last frames of the trial so that the entire trial will be analyzed. Image Matte Percentage allows you to set an exclusion area around the border of the video images which will be ignored when running the analysis. This region is displayed as a gray area around the image, and this allows poorly calibrated regions of the camera views to be ignored. Max People allows you to set how many people should be tracked. If this is set to no max, all people who are sufficiently visible in enough camera views will be tracked. It is recommended to set this intentionally to prevent unnecessary processing time associated with tracking additional people, and to prevent visual distractions when viewing the analyzed trial. Therefore, if there is only one person of interest in your recordings, set this value to 1. Person Tracking Mode allows you to select the method used to identify and number the tracked people within your trial. The options include Most Visible, Closest to Origin, and Order of Appearance. The Most Visible mode prioritizes all people visible in more than 75% of all frames from all cameras throughout the entire trial, and numbers them by their average distance to the origin. The Closest to Origin mode numbers all people by their average distance to the origin. The Order of Appearance mode numbers people by the order in which they become sufficiently visible to be tracked. Remove Stale IDs can be used to remove the identification and tracking of any people who are not visible for 100 or more consecutive frames at a time. Track Rotating People is an option that allows people who undergo inversions during the trial to be tracked with increased accuracy. This should be selected for any tasks such as handstands, cartwheels, or other activities where participants perform inversions. For all other activities, it is recommended that this option is disabled. Use Saved Model allows you to load an inverse kinematic model that was saved after processing a previous trial, and use it as the inverse kinematic model for the current trial. Large Lens Distortion uses a larger grid for lens distortion correction, and should only be used if there is a lot of distortion and loading is slow. There are 3 models that can be applied when solving the skeleton. The default model consists of 2 kinematic chains, one for the lower body and one for the upper body. The Use Full Body Model option will instead solve the skeleton using a model that consists of a single kinematic chain, that includes additional abdomen and neck segments. The full body model must be used if FBX file outputs are desired. The Use Separate Arm and Head Models option will solve the skeleton using a model consisting of 5 kinematic chains: the lower body, torso, left arm, right arm, and head. For additional details about the available models, review the model description section of our online documentation. Enable 3 degree of freedom knee will modify the joint constraints at the knee joints from the default 2 to 3 degrees of freedom. Smoothing frequency is used to select the cutoff frequency of the low-pass GCV-SPL filter used to smooth the pose from the inverse kinematics. This should be selected based on the movement you are analyzing. Show Warning can be selected to allow a pop-up warning to appear if the 3D detects that the selected cutoff frequency may be too low for the movement being tracked. The Analysis Bounding Box options can be used to restrict the modeling of tracked people to within a specified 3D bounding box. Select Display/Use to enable the bounding box, and enable the Use Camera Locations option to set the bounding box dimensions based on the camera positions, or use the origin X, Y, Z and length, width, height sliders to manually set the bounding box dimensions. The bounding box can be viewed in the 3D viewer area after it has been defined. The Rendering tab contains preferences related to how the data will be displayed in Theia 3D. Playback determines the step size between frames when playing back the videos. A value of 1 will show every frame, 2 will show every other frame, and so on. This setting can also be adjusted at the bottom right of the Theia 3D window, next to the video timeline controller. Skeleton Alpha allows the opacity of the projected skeleton on the 2D video views to be adjusted from transparent to opaque. Render Smooth IK determines whether the filtered or unfiltered pose of the skeletons will be rendered. If unselected, the unfiltered pose will be rendered. The Setup tab contains preferences related to how Theia launches and interacts with Visual 3D. The Path and Browse button should be used to set the path to the Visual 3D executable file in order to allow processed movements to be opened in Visual 3D seamlessly. This path is required for you to open analyzed movement trials as CMZ workspaces in Visual 3D directly from Theia 3D. Select GPUs on launch will determine whether the startup window is displayed every time Theia 3D is started. Thank you for watching this Theia 3D tutorial on settings. If you have any questions that have not been answered, please feel free to reach out to support@theiamarkerless.com.